This offseason is going to be wildly important for the future of the league, as there is now a massive balance of teams at the top looking to contend for a title, along with a ton of other teams looking to push their way into the playoff hunt, and the league is arguably more competitive than it's been in a long time. In this hunt, the quest to find the perfect pieces that fit into the holes certain teams have is officially on now that the offseason has begun, and you should absolutely be preparing yourself to see some major trades and acquisitions go down in the near future. This brings us to the topic of today's video, where we will be discussing some rumors that have been swirling surrounding one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, being the Boston Celtics. The Celtics were on the brink of a finals run last season, and being the storied franchise that they are, they're going to be looking to plug up some of the holes that they have in the team that's currently constructed. There's one player in particular that they seem to have their eyes on, and in this video we'll discuss this player's fit, how the Celtics could go about getting him, and whether or not he's even worth it in the first place. Before we get started though, it turns out about 79% of you watching aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button. We're in the home stretch going towards the goal of hitting 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and if you help me get there, it would mean the world to me. Now with that being said, let's begin. As I said at the start, the Celtics have reportedly been keeping their eyes on one of the biggest names in the league, hoping to bring him in, and that player is Andre Drummond of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Throughout the entirety of Andre Drummond's career, he's been one of the strangest big men to try to analyze in the entire league, with the way different people view him widely varying from person to person. On the surface, his numbers tell the story of a potentially being one of the best big men in the entire NBA, putting up monstrous rebounding numbers and seemingly improving as a scorer every year. Yet the impact he actually brings to the teams he plays for tell a completely different story. If I were to tell you that there was a player putting up averages of 18 points, 15 rebounds, 2 steals, and 1.5 blocks per game, you would probably assume he's in the conversation for being the best big man in the NBA. But the fact that this is Andre Drummond's production and nobody looks at him that way is very telling, and for good reason. When it comes down to it, the objective of every NBA team is to win, and your best players are supposed to be the ones that lead you towards that goal. They, in theory, make the team better with their presence, and if they really are a top player, they'll make the team better just by being on the court. But Drummond played 7.5 years in Detroit, and to put it simply, his numbers really didn't lead to that much impact in terms of winning games. Throughout his entire tenure there, they only made the playoffs twice, and both times they were swept in the first round, with Drummond failing to produce at the level that a star player should. Also, his time with the Pistons this last season, before he got traded to Cleveland, was probably the most telling spell of all that led to them trading him away for pennies on the dollar. In the almost 2,000 minutes that Drummond played for the Pistons last year, the team would, on average, get outscored by 5 points per 100 possessions, which is definitely not good at all, but you're probably thinking that it was mostly because of how bad the Pistons were as a team last year. However, in the 1,300 minutes where Drummond was on the bench or not playing last season, the Pistons actually outscored opponents by 0.7 points per 100 possessions, making them almost 6 points better without him. That's the exact opposite kind of production that a star player should have on his team, and it tells the story of how hollow his numbers truly are. However, with all of this being said, it doesn't mean Drummond is actually a bad player, and finding the middle ground to what exactly the role could be that he excels in is difficult, but not impossible. The Pistons really did a miserable job surrounding him with the type of talent that brings out the best in him, never giving him a top-tier ball handler or playmaker, spacing the floor with mediocre shooters and scorers for the most part, and basically making his life more difficult in every way possible. I think it's safe to say he's not the kind of player destined to be a star who leads a winning team as a number 1 option, or even as a number 2 option if we're being honest. But the fact that he's led the NBA in rebounding 4 times and dominates the glass in historic fashion makes him incredibly intriguing for teams that struggle in this regard, which brings us back now to how he became connected with the Boston Celtics on the rumor mill. As I said before, Drummond got traded to the Cavaliers for very little return near the deadline last season, and with only 1 year left on his contract, he's looking to sign an extension worth big money. The Cavaliers, however, have been very hesitant to meet his demands. According to Evan Damerel of Forbes, the contract talks between Drummond's representation and the Cavaliers have been a bit uncomfortable at times, with the two sides seemingly being very far apart when it comes to what they want. Drummond feels like he deserves a big payday for signing an extension early instead of testing the waters of free agency in 2021 as a sign of loyalty, but the Cavaliers are on a timetable that doesn't necessarily match up to what Drummond brings, seeming to shift their focus to the future with their young core rather than emphasizing success right now. This is why trading for Drummond in the first place was never really something that made sense to anyone at the time and still does not now, because the fit is incredibly head-scratching. Along with the reported frustrations in the contract discussions, Damerel also reported that the one team in particular that happened to be monitoring the situation closely was the Boston Celtics. If the two don't get a contract agreement, which at this point I would be surprised if they do, then the Celtics have the assets to make a move for him, and what they would have to give up likely would seem to be fairly cheap, considering he's already been traded for cheap once in the last year, and now he only has 1 season left on his contract. They have a ton of picks at their disposal, and they wouldn't necessarily need to give up many or even valuable ones of those picks, and they also have Gordon Hayward on an expiring contract at their disposal to move in order to match the salaries necessary for trades. The Hayward signing has pretty much been a flop, and they're very likely to move on from him after it expires, so instead, why not use him to bring in another player that fills a need and also comes with low risk by also being on an expiring contract like Drummond is. If they were to pursue this path, they will definitely need to think long and hard before doing so. Will Drummond actually fit into what the Celtics do? Will he be willing to sacrifice some of his own personal production for the betterment of the team? Does he actually improve the Celtics in the areas of concern that they have? These are all things that they need to think long and hard about, because the answers to those questions are definitely not simple yeses or nos. The Celtics already have a lot of mouths to feed, with Jason Tatum and Kemba Walker being very score-first in nature, then with Jaylen Brown also looking to continue to break out as a high-level scorer and all-around player. Daniel Theis is a very solid big man, particularly on the defensive side of things, but he's not the offensive player or the rebounder that Drummond is. It would be a gamble that either takes them to a level that they want, or could be absolutely backfiring on them, but it might be worth the risk because of the ability to move on after just 1 season. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below whether or not you think the Celtics should go after Andre Drummond. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.